So welcome to the Colloquium by Jordan Rudess, and you all know who Jordan Rudess is, and you've read his bio, but I'll just say we're really thrilled to have him here, and we're working with him on a variety of fronts, a variety of types of projects, and my personal experience with him was first Dixie Dregs, and then Dream Theater, and then solo projects of all sorts, and so check it out, you'll be amazed. And ask him your questions. I'm asking him all my questions about what it's like to have perfect pitch, what's it like to be able to do anything with your left and right hands independently, and so get those questions in. All right, take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Well, first of all, let me say again that it's such a pleasure to be here. This is such an awesome place, and all of you are so amazing and inspiring. I've been meeting such cool people every day, and it's a lot different than my life on the tour bus, and I really appreciate being here, so thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm excited to do this. I've been doing these symposiums, but, and I was trying to think, well, okay, a colloquium, like, not coming from the academic world, I'm kind of like, well, how's this going to be different than my symposium, and what is expected? And, kind of went through this little mental process of the whole thing. And in doing that, I kind of landed on something that I wanted to present, and that is kind of a little bit of a, not really a history of musical instruments, certainly not that, but a bit of a journey. Where have we been? Where are we going? And through my own eyes, through my experience. And my first experience was basically growing up and studying classical music with having nothing to do with electronics. And I wanted to start by talking about some instruments that I didn't really focus on, but were kind of important to the path. And that goes back to the clavichord. So, of course, that was a very interesting instrument. I think it was even capable of doing a little bit of pitch bending or some vibrato, which I found out recently. Somebody, was showing me their instrument, and I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me. Because that's so interesting, because here we are, we have instruments like the C-board that are doing this, pitch bending on a keyboard. We all think it's so amazing, but the reality is that on a clavichord, you could do that too. So we'll start there, and my Kronos, my very trusty Kronos, is such a great instrument because it really helped me with this whole presentation, because I can walk you kind of from like the beginning of time to now, and I'm going to switch to the iPad a little later in my presentation. But it really covers so much ground that it's going to help me in this little journey we have. So the clavichord. And moving on to the harpsichord, of course, one is struck, one is plucked. Here we go. That does not sound right. The harpsichord didn't have that possibility of playing intervals like that on one. Here we go. This is fun because I get to improvise with the different sounds and see what comes up. But looking back as well, it's really interesting to me being so involved in all these different kinds of keyboards, especially nowadays where you can make any sound you want, and thinking about the fact that we had and have these amazing pipe organs all around the world. They've been there for so many years, and they have such a great sound. And here we are, like trying to program synthesizers, and we went through the whole thing with analog synthesizers and little one-voice things. But meanwhile, the pipe organ had such an amazing, breadth and sound. And I tried to recreate kind of a big pipe organ energy here. one funny thing about my creating this sound is that I was thinking about the fact that, I didn't grow up playing the pipe organ. It was not part of my background. Really, it was more about the piano when I started. But when I was making this sound, of course, the pipe organ has these amazing pedals and you can create this great sound. So I was thinking, how am I going to do that with my synthesizer? So what I did was I layered like a kind of a sine wave-ish synth wave in my left hand underneath it to just give it that extra weight. Of course, with these instruments, there's all kinds of little tricks we can do like that, and I take advantage of all of them. So, okay, now we're kind of at the point where I started my musical life, and it was really about the piano. The piano was the first instrument that I spent a lot of time with, and so I started really seriously with piano when I went to Juilliard at the age of 9 and was surrounded by kids who were writing operas and doing all kinds of amazing things. And it was my first focus. So I'll play a little piano. So what's interesting about the piano to me is that, this is of course not a real piano, but does a pretty good job of giving you that color and those dynamics. What's interesting to me about that, especially coming from the perspective that I have now, is that the piano has no pitch bend. Basically, it's what Roger Lynn calls like on-off switches. You press a note down, you lift it up. It's very simple in that sense. However, the piano, the way it resonates is very complex, and it's a really beautiful sound, and it's so possible to achieve dynamics and expression just for what it is. So it's really worth noting that it doesn't have any of the cool things that we can do today, but at the same time, it's a beautifully expressive instrument. So I spent a lot of time thinking about the piano, playing in different styles. Meanwhile, when I was about 13 or 14, I had all the kids around me at school, they were starting to play in their like garage bands and do all these things, and I was very busy practicing the piano. I was 3, 4, 5 hours a day, but my brother would be out with his electric guitar and coming back and telling me stories about hanging out with the kids in school, and I kind of wanted to be a part of that. So I bugged my parents to find me some kind of an electric instrument, and my first keyboard was actually not a great organ like the one that we heard before, but a pretty crappy organ, although at the time we thought it was very cool. It was a Panther organ. Have you guys ever heard of the Panther organ? That was, so the Panther organ. Let me find that sound. I found something that sounds very, very close to it. It was a red beast that had two manuals, and it sounded a bit like this. Which I thought was cool at the time. I really did. I was happy with it. And I took it out to a few little, garages and kids' houses, and after that I kind of put it aside, and I didn't really think too much about that kind of music. But so I went along my path, and turned to be about 16 or 17 years old, and people started to play me different kinds of music, and I started to get really interested in it. And one day, some of my high school friends came over with a Sonic 6, a Moog Sonic 6. They came to my front door, and I remember my mother answered the door, and the guys were holding this instrument. She almost didn't let them in. because she was, any of that kind of stuff what these kids were doing, she didn't want to know about that. She didn't want me to know about it at all. But the kids kind of barged in and made their way with this thing that they would just hold, no case, nothing. I don't even know where they got it. They made their way to my room, and I put it down. Actually, we had no stand or anything. I put it down on my bed, and I sat there and I played it. And the first thing that I noticed was the fact that you could change the filter. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. To me, it was a whole awakening, because playing the piano, there was nothing continuous like that. You hit the key, the hammer hit the string, and the sound was there, and that was it. So this whole idea of playing with the filter, I kind of felt like the knobs were in my forehead or something like that. It was an immediate connection. And I really felt the difference between the acoustic sound and the electric sound. And I still totally vividly remember the way that kind of sonic the way it affected me. It left a sonic imprint in my mind. So it was the filter. It was the resonance, of course. But beyond that, the other thing that was really, really important was the fact that you could change pitch, right? So when I discovered the little pitch lever, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. It was absolutely groundbreaking. Here I am coming from this on-off thing that doesn't change pitch at all, and now I'm able to. So I started to make up exercises and just, figure out almost like technique exercises going. It was the beginning of a very interesting relationship with technology, because as the technology kept on changing, I kept on changing what I would do to try to kind of match the technology. So if I was offered pitch, I'd come up with technical exercises that allowed me to control the pitch. If I was offered a legato sound, I would try to, adjust my technique to make it do that. So that was amazing. The next thing that somebody showed me, they brought over the Tarkus record, Emerson, Lake and Palmer Tarkus, and that was a total awakening for me. Really, really important album. I listened to it over and over and over again. Mostly, not really because of the harmonies or things like that, but it was the power of the whole thing. I just was really struck by the impact that these musicians had. I was like, oh my God, you can do that with keyboards? Incredible. I had heard like Chick Corea and a lot of things, but I never heard it sound like that. So it was this kind of, aggressive and percussive organ that really changed my path. Of course, it was so that power combined with all those sus chords, it just did something to me, and it really changed my life. And the next thing that was impactful, and it was directly related to my first experiment with the synthesizer on my bed, was this whole idea of the pitch wheel and the pitch lever. I had heard Patrick Moraz playing in a group called Refugee. Patrick Moraz is an amazing musician, still alive today, very influential to my musical life. But the way that he played the synthesizer was so awesome. He was playing leads, and it reminded me of a guitar lead, and I didn't really ever think that way on a keyboard. And his sound was a little bit like this. It was very funny about this whole lead thing. When at some point I got a gig playing with Jan Hammer. And Jan Hammer is awesome at playing, leads. And he said to me, "Oh yeah, I see you kind of got the lead thing from me." And I didn't want to disappoint him, because I really didn't. I kind of got it from like Patrick Moraz and maybe a little George Duke and that kind of thing. So he was a little bit disappointed, and that's okay. but I want to play. So the lead thing, I'll fast forward a little bit. I want to just play what the lead thing turned into me. Right now I have kind of what a signature sound, a signature lead sound that I made, and it sounds a bit like this. So the idea of pitch bending and all that stuff has definitely moved into another zone. Of course, this sound, I've got my joystick, which goes in all different directions, bringing in harmonics, and I've got this sub-octave thing that I can do on my ribbon. So, so that's a really fun sound for me to play. So, all right, so here I am. I got my first mini Moog. I bugged my parents, I put pictures all over my wall. I wanted this thing, the filters, the pitch bend. I was so interested. I was still going to Juilliard at the time, and I still had to practice 3 or 4 hours a day, but I really, really wanted this mini Moog. So finally, my father set up an appointment for me to visit an uncle and told him how important it was, and the uncle said, okay, I'm buying you a mini Moog. So I got my mini Moog. It was my first instrument. It was kind of sounded, you know. After I got my mini Moog, then I realized it was a little bit dry, and I wanted to have it sound a little cooler than that, and I discovered the echo machine. That was a very important thing. So my system really was a mini Moog and a little, I don't know what it was in those days, like a little tape echo. You know, of course, sounded a little bit like So after I got used to the mini Moog, I was like, this is, you know, playing one note at a time. I really need more than that. I wasn't used to playing one note at a time. I thought it was very cool, but a little bit limiting. So I discovered the Taurus bass pedals. Very, very special instrument. The Taurus bass pedals had a sound like this. And I kind of felt a little godlike when I would step on them. It was really, you know, it was amazing. And what's interesting is that, you know, the mini Moog never really got the sound of the Taurus. Very close, but it could never do that. So the two of them made a really, really kind of interesting system. So here I was playing one note with my foot and one note with my hand. And I was really pretty happy. I thought it was very, very powerful. But of course I needed chords, so I was kind of looking around, what can I do, what can I get? In those days, one of the really good options was the ARP string machine. You guys remember the ARP string machine? At this point, if we hear it, it's a little bit of an annoying sound, I guess, because we're so used to like great strings or whatever, but it had a vibe and it sounded a little bit like this. Of course, I had a lot more respect for it in those days. I thought it sounded really cool. Now when I hear the sound, I'm like, But it was a polyphonic instrument. It had a good sound. It kind of did a stringy thing. So then here I was now with my mini Moog, my Taurus bass pedals, and my ARP string machine. And if I think back of all the systems that I've owned, that was probably like my proudest moment. That was a great, great system. So I tried to simulate, I don't have 3 hands to play all of it at the same time, but I put together a little sound. So here I am with my Taurus, my string machine, my mini Moog. There was a lot of joy in those days, for sure.
Would you play that with chords in the left hand, lead in the right hand with no pitch bend, or you do all different?
Any combination, yeah, totally. So, well, it was a great system, but it wasn't the most practical system, and also technology was moving along a little bit. And at this point, so let me skip to the fact that, all right, so I had enough synthesizer input from my friends playing me Genesis and Yes and Pink Floyd and Gentle Giant and King Crimson, that I finally decided that I needed to leave Juilliard. Because I just couldn't like hang with the the scene that was going on there. I walked in one day for a lesson on playing the Chopin Ballade. I had played it for about a week, the G minor Ballade, and I learned it pretty well. And I sat in front of Adele Marcus. I started playing it, and she came over and she took the book away from me, and I kind of stopped. And she said, why'd you stop? I said, well, I've been playing it for about 5 days, and it's a 30-page piece. So she said, well, when you study with Adele Marcus, you have to memorize it in the first week. And I thought to myself, well, I guess I have to find the door, because I want to go play my mini Moog. Because this is not fun. So I had been there from the age of 9, so I get, it was a long time, and I really, really wanted to change. So when I started to interface with the world of with this world of rock, pop musicians, I needed some kind of a electric piano. So in those days, best we could do was kind of find an FM piano, which had a good sound. So I got a Yamaha piano. I don't remember the model name, but it sounded a bit like this. So that was cool. So I added that to my rig. And then I kind of fast forward. I had moved to Baltimore for a little while. I was playing in a band called Apricot Brandy. And we did all the like high school dances and kind of like, whatever was kind of the appropriate gig for the teenagers at the time. And the guy who was the leader of the band, I don't know, he must have had some money from somewhere, and he was buying all these keyboards, Hammond organs, he was buying Mellotrons. I had my system, but he would always buy these really cool things. So I got to experience the Mellotron for the first time. And he basically put it on my side of the stage, and he said, play it. And I'm sure all of you know what a Mellotron is, and when I discovered it, it was like, wow, this thing is really, really cool. Of course, it would break in every gig. You'd have to sit over there and kind of like tweak it and fix it. And I was like, what's going on with the Mellotron? And sometimes I'd play a note, would start and start garbling, and like somebody was inside like eating the tapes or whatever. But it's interesting to me that the Mellotron has become a really strong stylistic kind of voice in music, and a lot of composers use that to this day. And Mellotron samples, if you want to have a certain vibe, you want to get to that prog thing, that King Crimson-y thing, or Moody Blues, you use those kind of sounds. So, of course, the two most important Mellotron sounds are the voices, kind of like this type of thing, and the strings. Of course, there's the famous Mellotron flutes from the Beatles and a lot of things. Mellotron has been used in so many different ways. So I got to play around with the Mellotron for a while. But then the next stage was kind of moving into some different kinds of synthesizers. And it was about the time that I really, really needed to find a job that I discovered the D50, the Roland D50. Very interesting synthesizer, because what it did was you had these little like sampled kind of attack transients, and you had waveforms, and you could take the attack transients and kind of apply them with the waveforms, and it created a really unique sound. And I learned that synthesizer really, really well. And right after I got it, I got an offer to come and audition for a job with Korg, to do a product specialist job with Korg. And they said, oh, well, what you should do is you should come and try to sell us like a Korg synthesizer. I said, well, I don't know anything about Korg synthesizers. I know about this D50 thing that I have. I can come and show you that. So here I am at Korg, and I brought my D50 with me, and it's my job to convince them that they should basically buy a D50. So I took it there and I loved the thing, and I you know, was just so excited about it that I actually did get the job by getting them excited about the D50. So the sound was a little bit like this. So you get that nice kind of attack, all different kinds of attacks, and some kind of a nice digital waveform. Yeah, totally.
I had one of those too once.
Yeah, they were cool. Around that time, also, Wolfgang Palm was working on some wavetable stuff and came up with a synthesizer that everybody was really, really excited about, and that was the PPG. I remember that, you know, there was a tremendous buzz. It was really expensive. It looked really cool, and it had a cool sound too. It sounded a little bit like this. The other very, very strong memory I have is when samplers first hit the market. That was a really, really exciting time. I had been like checking out some music stores around New York, where I'm from, places like Manny's and Sam Ash, and I can remember like the day that I think it was the Akai S900 came into the store. And it was just an instrument that played, I don't know, like one sample at a time. It was really, really simple, but in those days it was like the coolest thing ever. So, you know, we were all excited about all these different hits and stuff that you could play, just single, you know, one-shot things like. On the Akai S900, I don't think I probably could have overlapped them like that, but what the hell, we're here now, so might as well do it. So yeah, so that was awesome. But then the next thing that happened was that we kind of graduated from that a little bit, and I remember there was another little wave of excitement with the EMU emulator, and that was a really, really big deal, because all of a sudden you'd walk into a music store and literally they would do all these different layouts. I remember there was, I don't know, cartridges or discs or whatever, however you used to load the thing, that I don't recall. But you would be able to have setups on the keyboard where you could have different sounds on every key, and everybody was going nuts with all that kinds of stuff. It was kind of like this type of thing. You know, you'd walk in the store and everybody would have, all the different stores would have their own little layouts. You get the idea. It's a good one. We were all very, very entertained with that in the day. So, of course, because it's a Kronos, I just decided to, and I'm going to get here eventually, you know, the effects that are possible are so great. So what I did was I think I put little reverse delay. Julius and I have been talking a lot about reverse delay lately, so I added some reverse delay and some frequency shifting to this one. There you go. The next thing that really caught my attention is some work that Korg was doing at the R&D facility out here. I think it was Dave Smith and John Bowen that were really into this, and they created this kind of technology. I don't know if they created it, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but they came forward with this idea of wave sequencing. And I can remember so well the day that the first wave station came to our office at Korg. I was working for Korg. It was an amazing instrument. And the instrument came in, and a friend of mine, whose name is Jack Hotop, who's been there for like 30 years, he basically met the person carrying the box and grabbed it from him and took it and put it on his stand, and he put on his headphones and he got right at it and he started getting really busy, and all of us are kind of sitting there going, what's he doing? What's going on with that thing? We all really wanted to know, because it was like a big buzz that this thing was going to come in. And actually, the sound that he created that day so many years ago is still part of a lot of the Korg instruments, and this is the sound of the wave station. So it was really cool that you had all these different waves playing on one key. And I started programming it and going crazy on the thing and enjoying it. And I also realized that you could do, again, I tried to use the technology to kind of like change the way that I play, because I realized every time I hit a new key that the wave sequence would start and maintain tempo from the moment that I hit the key. So I would be doing things like to try to match the clock tempo with my fingers, and it was almost like a much better way to play with a metronome, you know. Or even just one day I walked into a show by Cirque du Soleil, and I sat down on my seat, and the show started, and the very first sound the guy played, I almost jumped out of my seat, because I was like, that's my sound! And the way it struck me, it was like he was playing my composition, but then I realized that, hey, you're a sound programmer, you give these things away, and people are going to use them, and that's just what it is. So, but the wave station is awesome. And then also the wave station was capable of this kind of vector idea where you could smoothly blend different waveforms, and you could use your joystick to do that, and creating some really beautiful textures, kind of like this. So at this point, the technology started to really, get more advanced, and we started to have a lot of fun with it. But other things were happening too, like the whole movement of sampling really became much stronger. So you started to be able to have multi-samples and doing really interesting things, and it really changed the way we think about music and working with technology. This particular sound has got a funny story to it. Let's see if I play a moment of it. I remember the day I brought that into the studio with Dream Theater, and I was laying it down in a track, and there's an engineer, his name is Paul Northfield, and he said to me, "Oh my God, those sopranos are right in my face." He was very affected by that sound. He had never heard a sample like that. He's like, fun stuff. So of course, the ability to make your own samples was an awakening as well, and I've had a lot of fun with that in my career. One of the sounds that I enjoyed capturing is this one. The reason I enjoy this one is because it's not any guitar, it's actually the sound of John Petrucci's guitar. So there's no guitar sound on any factory keyboard that's going to sound anything like that. So my pinky is in charge of playing some John Petrucci guitars during the gigs. As a keyboard player, you have to be very humble because nobody knows if I'm sitting there going, they're looking at him, they're not looking at me. Meanwhile, I'm playing a choir, I'm playing a guitar, I'm playing an organ, an orchestra. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield right now. We don't get any credit. It's just like, but the sounds are so awesome. So with all this great sampling and multi-sampling and all these different kinds of synthesis, it brought the whole art of playing the keyboard to this, amazing level where it's just so much fun. And I can create sounds maybe a little bit more like this, which is just a large layer of some strings and some choir. And I think I even threw in some horns that I can bring on a slider, but you can check it out. It's kind of nice. So let's see. And of course there's things like this, which are also really fun. I love that one because it's a mixture between kind of the epic organ sound, and I actually created it the other day with my friend Mauro. We were sitting in the studio kind of looking for the most intense thing we could find, and that was one of them. So this is a combination of my John Petrucci power chords, the choir, the pipe organ. Kind of the whole kitchen sink. And the Kronos is amazing for that because you can have up to 16 different sounds stacked. It's just a matter of polyphony. So as far as, as far as the state of the art of kind of being a keyboard player and accessing all these different kinds of sounds and all these different kinds of technologies, this really takes us to a very advanced place. So that combined with all the cool effects in here, and it can do things like this. I love this example of the possibility of effects in the Kronos, because if I take off the frequency shifter and the auto reverse sound, it sounds like this. Turn on the frequency shifter again. And if I put on my little reverse thing, there you go. So, really fun. So now I'm going to move over to my iPad. So the whole thing with my journey has been kind of one of a lot of discovery, because although I love playing the keyboard, I love all the sounds, I love the technology, and I'm satisfied to a point, I've also been on kind of a search to find new kinds of expression, which led me to my work with multi-touch devices, something that to me is really, really important, because although again I love these sounds, there's only so much I can do with pressing a key. I wanted to experience more of a continuous kind of expression and see what was possible with my fingers. Because, you know, there's so many instruments that are the core of what they are. It's all about you start a sound, whether it's with your voice or a violin or a wind instrument. You start the sound and you have control of it the entire time that it's going. It's not about hitting it and then it just kind of happens. To me, to be able to put my hand on something and to kind of, you know, control it the whole time was what I really wanted to do. And the other thing about all the keyboards that I had played up to this point is that if I play something on the keyboard and then I move one of the levers, whether it's pitch or it's a controller that's controlling filter, everything's going to change at the same time. So that to me, it was totally like ridiculous. Like where are we with the technology? So when I started to play with multi-touch devices, the first thing I was thinking about is I want to be able to play, but I want to have all my fingers work independently. I want to be able to change the pitch. I want to be able to change the filter. I want there to be real control under my hands. So I was lucky enough to get into the whole kind of app world at the very beginning and find a developer whose name is Kevin Chartier, who heard out my vision and was interested in the same kind of thing. And in those days when we started this, it was really nothing, at least in the commercial world, that did anything like this. So we started to explore. I told him I wanted to have an instrument that was based on kind of like vertical lines, so I had a lot of space to move my finger and to really express a note. And I also wanted to do something with visuals. It was a big calling for those days because, you know, it wasn't just I wanted to make some little interesting instrument. I wanted to do something with graphics and audio and have it pitch bend on all the different notes and change the timbre per string. So this instrument kind of was like this. So I could play a note. I could express myself on the vertical line, and I call it MorphWiz because it kind of morphs between these waveforms, and at the same time as you're hearing the audio morph, it's also doing a morph between the visuals. And these visuals are just ones that I kind of chose. I wanted something that represented each of the waveforms. So we were able to create something where I could, if I wanted to, I could hold a note, and while I hold the note, I could be pitch bending with the other hand, like this. So my vision started to actually come to life with this, and actually every patch on MorphWiz, you can choose kind of how you want it to look. You can have those lines or not. But the concept for each patch remains the same, where every finger is totally independent. So if I've got a note on the bottom of the throw, and here, I can So really, it's just it's kind of sending, you know, a different channel of information under each of my fingers, which is very much like what's happening with seaboards and continuums and that kind of thing. And also we kind of made use of the whole accelerometer thing, so you could. And now I don't have the lockdown, but. That's the cable that's kind of coming out. The other thing that I wanted to do with this instrument is I really was interested in the whole idea of being able to play in the fretless domain as well as diatonic, but be able to play fretless with a kind of supported intelligence to the instrument. So I wanted the ability for the instrument to track your finger, but to notice when my finger went down in a particular spot. So if it goes down, let's say on this note, even if I'm a little bit left or right, well, it'll still play the exact pitch. And when I slide, I want to have a smooth slide. And when I get to my destination, I wanted it also to kind of round the pitch. I thought that, okay, you know, being a great violinist is wonderful, but the ability to have the technology kind of help you with playing in the fretless domain and assist you with the pitch was really, really a cool idea. So this was the first kind of experiment with that. I'm just kind of running through these little things quickly. My next experiment kind of took me on a different path, but I wanted to create instruments that were things that were kind of cutting edge, but at the same time were really fun. And I had remembered playing with my very first Casio little sampler. I think it was called the SK1. Did you guys ever see the SK1? It was a little portable sampler, but it was really groundbreaking. It was very, very cool. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a really great sampler that we had in our pocket, something that you could put on your iPhone. So I began some experiments with this. And the first thing we did is I said, oh, I can put like the Jordan sounds, like my lead sound, you know. After that, I started to think about, well, it's going to be very cool to have a sampler right in your pocket, so you could sample it at any moment. Sampler right in your pocket, so you can sample it at any moment. To have a sampler right in your pocket. So that was really fun, but I wanted to shake it up a little bit and do something that was very different. So I called up my developer one day. I had this idea. I said, hey, Kevin, what about the idea of being able to play on the waveform, actually touch the wave? And at first, he said to me, what are you talking about? You want to do what? I said, I just want to put my hand on different parts of the waveform and trigger sound by doing that. And he said, well, I can't do that. And so I said, well, that's too bad, because I had a dream about it like the night before. And then he called me back the next day. He says, I think I can do that. I said, oh, great, let's do it. So it wasn't long after that he sent me the first build of that. And so this is what you can do. You can kind of bring your finger along. You can't touch the wave. And you can assign, so you can go through the waveform horizontally, but you can also make assignments to the vertical throw as well. And every finger is, again, completely independent. So I could have one going forward, one going backward, one going up, the other one going down. Too much fun. Really is fun. But that, and I thought that was really cool, but I wanted to do more than that as well. You know, it gets, especially in those days, this was pretty cutting edge. You know, we're so used to doing all the multi-sampling. And I said to Kevin one day, I said, you know what, this multi-sampling thing is cool, but can't we like just take one sample and make it work like for a larger range? And again, he gave it some thought, and he came back to me and said, oh yeah, I could work that out. I guess there's I don't remember the name of the library. You guys might know. There was a library that we could license. It was usually, or it is usually used for just slowing down or speeding up music, like some of those applications that like Amazing Slow Downer or stuff like that. But the idea was, let's see if we can make that happen. So if I just go, let's see, la 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 la. So the classic mode of sampling, you know, I'm going to play. It's going to do the whole Munchkin thing and the whole, you know, dungeon idea, which can be fun. That's okay. But in our new mode, what happens is we can do this. Oh, I'm in a monophonic mode. Let me take it out of that. Poly mode. Yeah. Here we go. So one sample and you can do it. And again, so this is something that people could walk around with in their iPhone. I don't even think there's anything really like this still to this day. This is already, you know, some years old. So that was one of the things. And then, you know, some granular stuff as well. So I asked him to do that, and he came through again. Here we go. So this is. So I asked him to do that, and he came through again. So I asked him to do that, and he came through And then the final touch of this application was that you could resample. So if I do this, and now that's my sample, come out of granular mode. I was called up by one of the Berkeley professors one day and he said, oh, my students are using SampleWiz to do their film scores. I was like, wow, that's really cool. So then he sent me some. They were pretty cool. They were great. So that's a little bit of that. So now just fast forwarding to our latest creation, which kind of puts together some of the ideas, come on, that I've been working on. And some of you have seen this, maybe some of you have not. The app is called GeoShred, and it's an app that is based on the technology of our friend Julius over here, and Nick is the main programmer, and Pat, I guess, is not here today. But GeoShred is based on physical modeling, and it's also based on this playing surface that I've been working with for a while. And it makes really great use of this whole pitch intelligence. It's one of the things that really is amazing about it, and it's really, really playable. The first sound that comes up is this one. It's called Shred Lead. Some of you might have seen me playing this with Dream Theater. My tech actually gutted my keytar, took out the keys, put in the iPad, and we use another smaller one as a visualizer kind of thing, and I go on stage and I blast through some leads with GeoShred. But one of the things to notice is that I've always been a big fan of guys like Steve Vai or Jeff Beck, these guys who have amazing control of pitch and volume, because they just do things that nobody else can do. And I wanted to be able to do that on my instrument. And with this, you really can do that. You can do all these amazing kind of bends. So if you want to go and exciting the string. So where most like guitar players, they'll bend a second or they'll bend a third, or Steve Vai will bend like a fifth or even more, or Jeff Beck does these incredible things. This allows you to kind of express like that. Also, you can do things that you could never do on any other instrument. You could do these amazing kind of circles. And one of the features we developed on the iPhone way back in the Geo Synthesizer days, when the surface was really small, and I wanted to play through the entire range, was this ability to stay on what we call one string, which is this horizontal plane, and to be able to kind of fly through the range of an instrument. So if I do this. Tone one is really cool. And then every patch can actually look different, and the size of the notes can be different. The reason we did this is because the area of the notes, you can put any parameters within those and express on X. On X and Y, but not on Z on the iPad, but on the iPhone, you can do Z as well. So an example like this, if I put my hand down, it's going to be very, very quiet, and then as soon as I move, I have a lot of room to express. So I love this thing about the software and about a surface like this where you can see, and you're not locked into an instrument that has, just really, really tiny keys or whatever size. Whatever is the appropriate kind of layout for the patch that you're playing is what you'll get. So in this one, I can do stuff like this. I was in the studio the other day with this amazing drummer named Marco Minneman, and the guitar player was doing some stuff, but then he stopped playing, and I reached over to GeoShred, and I was like, and he went, "Why am I hearing guitar?" He says, what is that? Started to freak out. I said, no, it's me. So over here, GeoShred. And it was actually a funny moment. And you know, I have to be careful about instruments like this because the guys in my band, especially the guitar player, you know, we do things very gingerly. We show him different stuff. And he actually at this point thinks that it's really cool. So I've gotten away with a keytar. I've gotten away with an iPad. I keep on, and the Continuum, all these amazing things. So to wrap up, what I wanted to say to all of you is that, you know, we've gotten to this place where we walk around with our iPhones or Android devices or whatever it is in your pocket. And there's so much creativity and so much power, so much forward thinking in these devices, and so many things that you can do on those that you can't do on almost 100% of the hardware-based instruments that are out there. And it's definitely an interesting point in our history where we have to start to really focus on how to create instruments that will have the power that we need in all the different ways. Like, you know, in a lot of my discussions with people, we talk about what makes a great instrument. I think that all the different senses that we have, we can't ignore any of them. We have to, you know, have the tactile sense, we have to have haptic feedback, we want to be able to see the instrument. Everything that you can incorporate, that's what we're looking for. That's what makes a great instrument. The iPad is amazing. Of course, there's a lot of limitations. If I'm playing, you know, my greatest lead ever, and I look up while I'm doing it, well, I might have some problems until somebody makes me some cool goggles or something like that, which I can kind of see what I'm doing. So we need to get to the point where we have hardware instruments that offer this kind of expression and this flexibility and give you the power that you have when you know, that's on your little device in your pocket. Things like the Rolly Seaboard, they're wonderful. But that's, you know, it's moving a little bit too slowly, and you know, as great as it is, it's mostly black and it's a little hard to see, you know, on stage. And so I encourage everybody to really think about it because, you know, that's where we're going. And I know our industry doesn't have the same support as, like, let's say the lighting industry, where I walk up to my lighting guy's mixing desk and I'm like, oh my God, those sliders are amazing and that display is incredible. And then I walk over to my Kronos and I feel really, really sad when I look at the sliders and I'm like, so it's not quite as supported as some of the other industries, but we really, really need to move in that direction. And now that the MPE thing is happening, where more people are aware of the fact that musicians want to have different channels under each finger and have that kind of expression, I hope that the whole movement will grow a lot faster. And of course, with that, we're kind of asking musicians to almost take on new complication as well. Because, you know, things like the Seaboard or even the apps where you can move your fingers in different directions are fantastic. But it brings the whole art of playing to another level as well. Because people might be used to, like, sitting on a, you know, traditional piano keyboard and just hitting some notes and not worrying about where their fingers go. So there's a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of exciting, you know, things that can happen. And I'm very excited to see what everybody's going to create, what we all do, and where it all goes. So thanks again. Anybody want to ask a question or bring up a topic? Yes?
I have a keyboard question. So as normal keyboardist, I'm not used to play like on an iPad and so on.
Right.
And it would take me a lot of time to like learn to express myself on such a device.
Yes.
So I think that, what do you think about the learning curve on changing, going from a regular piano keyboard to something else for a keyboardist?
That's a great question, and it's something that I thought a lot about. You know, there's a lot of amazing instruments that people have been developing, you know, things that are spherical and triangular and waving your hands in the air and all kinds of incredible things. But I think there is so much to be said about offering new instruments that are based on something that is familiar. I think that an instrument like the Seaboard, for example, but even though it's different, at least there's the very familiar kind of piano form factor, so you have some chance of getting started. It's a really new instrument, but it has that as the basis. So we're not asking you to completely change to something you've never seen or heard of. I think that, a lot of those kind of left of center instruments are really cool. There's some really great ones. But I think you can make a more powerful statement and move further and affect more of the population by creating something that has some, something that's familiar, like a piano keyboard is a perfect example. So it's important, but even with the keyboard, like I see people walk up to it, and some people take to it rather quickly, and other people they can't play it at all, even if they're pianists. So I think there's more that could be done even with that technology, still getting that kind of expression, but making it even more familiar. So I'm all for like instruments that have some familiarity to them. I think it's good. Anybody else? Julius?
Do you think that it's valuable to maybe lock in on a particular layout that you use all the time and just really practice it and make that your axe and make that your standard layout and maybe get some tactile feedback, maybe lay down some sort of ridge material, go ahead and put down a screen protector that you can like put tape on and stuff and just kind of build it up and make it the same all the time and just practice it?
Well, I definitely do. And matter of fact, like with our app, with GeoShred, when I'm playing leads, there's the configuration that I really like, the sizing and the amount of rows, and I always go back to that for basic shredding. Right, and because I can start to look away, and I can play and know where I am, just physically by muscle memory. Of course, there's some patches like this one, where I need more space. So maybe in that case, I think maybe there's a few different layouts depending on what you want to do that one can get used to.
Like maybe that's another instrument, right? So you have your standard keyboard layout that's your main instrument, but you play a few other instruments like this that are optimized for different kinds of dimensional controls. So you kind of learn that it's like you don't have to play one instrument, but maybe try to keep it fairly small, have kind of a minimum spanning set of instrument layouts.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about that. And like even with the GeoShred layout, for those who are not familiar, it's very similar to like a bass guitar. All the rows, the default of the rows are all in fourths. So you can have like, So if you played like a guitar or a bass, you have a pretty good start right there. So there was the concept and the idea of keeping things that somewhat familiar as well in the creation of this. I'm totally all for that. Anybody else? Chris?
How about the realm of haptics, because you mentioned that.
Yeah.
What's the greatest vibration that you ever got?
In any instrument?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I have to say that probably the instrument of all the ones I've played that gives me the most feedback and tells me what's going on is the piano keyboard.
Okay.
So I can close my eyes, and as soon as I touch anywhere, if my hand just rubbed against the slightest bit of a black note, I know where I am. So there's information that tells me where I am. And in like all the instruments that I've played, whether it's like a continuum or an eigenharp or GeoShred or Axis 64 or the tons of different things, I don't get that. Or even the C-board, even though it has the piano keyboard, doesn't give me that information. So I think I think having that information is really, really important.
Quite a while ago, Brent Gillespie had done some work here, which had kind of active force feedback. Like the resistances of the piano were software controlled. So there's like motors, right?
Yeah.
And you could have a mode for harpsichord action or piano action or
Awesome.
upright piano action, right?
Right.
So the way he demoed that, kind of to show it at the ultimate moment, the defense.
Right.
Of the word defense.
Yes, totally.
He had two keyboards instead of a sword.
Okay.
One was just a KX88, so it was just a MIDI controller.
Right.
The other was a disc clavier.
Right.
And Brent's a phenomenal keyboardist. So he sat down at the disc clavier and he played a cadenza from Beethoven's Sonata.
Yeah.
Beautiful flourish.
Right.
On the disc clavier key, so it sounded right. It was right.
Yeah.
And then he walked over to the KX88, which is just switches.
Right.
And was MIDI to the disc clavier. And he, I don't think he was faking it. I mean, he did his darndest, and there was so much missing. Just from the touch.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's
It's an interesting.
a really hopeful world, but I'm curious if you've seen anything that gets towards that.
Well, I mean, in my own experience, having played on every, so many different kinds of actions, everything from like mini keys to like something like an X key that has like no throw at all. It makes a really big difference to me if I'm going to like walk on stage and expect to play like a really serious piece to have something that has a real like action, like a piano action, because otherwise I just don't feel that comfortable. When I was much younger, I used to play on all these different lightweighted keyboards, 61 note keys. For some reason, I didn't care as much, but now I really want like my full action for anything that's really, really serious. So that kind of weight, I mean, that's a good example of another. Even besides like the closing your eyes thing and being able to tell where you are, that the feel of that is really, really important. But I think a lot of it is what you get used to. Like from my expressions on GeoShred, I'm playing on glass. And that's great because of all the different things you can slide on. That glass is the coolest thing to slide on. It's the most effective. And I don't know if we put like little ridges or something like that, what's that going to do to the sliding? So it's kind of like, you give in one area, you take away from the other. So, but yeah, the action of something is really important. But I think it has a lot to do with how much time you spend practicing in a certain way, what you're used to.
It sounds like you have a lot of optimism about the head-mounted display, the heads-up display. You think that if you can just see it, and if there's no latency, that might do it. Maybe you don't need haptic feedback, and you can just see.
Well, that'll certainly help if I could see where my hand is in relationship to the instrument.
So the visual cue might be enough.
Visual cues. Yeah, it's so, and that is the whole visual thing is so interesting because there's that part of just seeing where my hand is and being able to keep, in my space. But the other thing about the visual thing I've noticed with all the different instruments and apps that I played with is that it's really hard to separate the visual from like the haptic. Like, these applications where you're like strumming a guitar and you can see the string vibrate. Well, if it's done really well, you get the sense that something's really, you forget. If the sound is there and the visual is there, you feel like something's happening in the physical domain, but it's not necessarily happening.
Somebody asked me the other day if we could simultaneously have the sound going out of the iPad into the PA, but have the speaker of the iPad Pro be playing at the same time, because it vibrates.
Oh, right. Oh, they wanted to feel that.
What if there were like each square could have its own vibration? Or something?
Right.
That if you could control.
You can control it. Like the root has a totally.
Vibration level.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, then you could do something like you could have the root of the scale have more haptic feedback, and so as you're sliding your finger, maybe even as you get closer to the root, it has more vibration. When you get on the root, it definitely gives you the
different kind of idea. It's not even really a sensor, is it? It's more like it's not a sensor. So it's kind of the opposite idea of like the force touch thing.
Mm-hmm.
There you're really depending on an accurate sensor. But this would be like a mechanical thing. I don't know if anybody's. Oh, well, we have vibrate mode on the phone, but it's global.
Right. We need the MPE version of vibrate mode, right?
Yeah, well, a glorified MPE.
Yeah. So where you could literally program where you want those particular.
I want this square to have X newtons of vibration or whatever the unit is.
Mm-hmm.
And vibration gradients would be nice. Like you could have a vibration when you cross a key boundary, have another little tick when you hit the middle of the key, just a little orientation vibration.
Or little electrical shocks that are not harmful.
Yeah.
There you go. Right. Right, or maybe there's an output of the device that like goes to like a wristband or something like that, and that's where you feel your playing hand, and it tells you what's going on.
It screws immediately with your brain.
Well, all this stuff integrates, all your sensory input integrates, and your brain will interpolate
What
it.
if the idea that would be? What if you hit on a certain key, then a signal gets sent to your brain that you hit?
Right, totally.
A certain piano thing.
Right. I mean, the whole lot.
Bypass the whole that's far out.
Yeah. Well, it's not that far
out place.
Yeah, right. But the like the idea of playing in the air, like the whole VR stuff. I like doing things in VR and all the crazy experiments. But what I don't like is that just waving your hands in the air is not enough. And the gloves, I mean, somebody was telling me about a really advanced glove that sounded amazing. That's kind of in, what?
A haptic feedback glove, right?
Yeah, that really gives you all your fingers. And when you start waving your hands in the air and you start being able to, get a lot of response, well then maybe it starts to become real and more meaningful. But if you're wearing a big glove on your hand, that would probably take away from the joy. Fernando?
I don't know quite how to phrase the question, but there was this question about the transition from being a virtuoso in a normal instrument, let's say,
Right.
piano, whatever, and then how you transition to a virtual instrument running on a pad surface. But I have the opposite. What about, what is your thought on transitioning from nothing, right, no musical training, which you obviously have, into one of these instruments? Is there a new generation of virtuosi that goes into a different direction and they train themselves
to do new things?
Interesting things on that new instrument?
Yeah. I think that, I've seen...
That goes beyond playing with it a little bit and getting cool.
Yeah, we've seen that a little bit, like with GeoShred as an example, where there are people who haven't played anything and all of a sudden they're sending us like videos and they've been practicing, in techniques that maybe I didn't even think of. But I think with any instrument, people kind of need to have some education. There needs to be that's one of the things we need to work on is a method. People can invent their own and maybe get so far, but if it's a whole new thing, if it's playing in a sphere or something like that, then maybe there's some instruction that gets them to, helps them get to a certain level. Yeah.
Sort of related to that, I was really struck by something you said early on where you went and made your own technique exercises for all these instruments.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to a pedagogical architecture that you've inherited from your training. And I think what I hear in Nando's question is this idea of are there people inventing their own pedagogical, so if you come across that, and also, I'm not sure it's really a question here. I mean, it really stuck out to me that you actually invented these exercises.
I know what you mean,
course, I come from that background to some degree, so I've done that myself. So it's a really resonant point. But have you encountered, I guess, in your travels, people who've invented their own exercises or their own way of making sense of instruments?
Yes.
Be it beats, even something like this.
Totally. I come across that a lot. My first thought was on the seaboard. I was one of the first people who ever played the seaboard. I think there was one guy and maybe the inventor that played it before me. And as I would show it to people and watch them play and kind of develop on it, I'd see, one guy's doing this thing where he's kind of turning his hand over, and I'm like, wow, that's an interesting idea. So because it's such a new instrument, people are kind of coming up with ways to do it. There's no real, it's like the Wild West or something. There's no real, way to do it. I mean, I can recommend something, right?
But you formalized it into I'm going to do this thing and then work on.
Right, and even totally, and even with the seaboard, kind of based on a piano form factor, having being able to do what you can do. One of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to create kind of a course on playing it, because I've been practicing it and I've based on what it can do and the fact that you can move in the Y direction and do interesting things with the lifting. I could make an exercise book with it. And the same for GeoShred. There's definitely technique. I think it's up to the people who are kind of the pioneers of the instrument to offer those ideas. And if you want a new instrument to be successful, I think you kind of need to establish a method as well, which is important.
But you could build that into GeoShred like an etude mode.
The etude mode. Yeah, right. Totally.
Figures out.
Yeah, right.
Gives you some feedback.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
I just wanted to respond that GeoShred has really been embraced by the Indian Carnatic community and talk about pedagogical architecture that's completely different than ours. But if you Google GeoShred and India or Carnatic, you'll see some unbelievable stuff. And Jordan was in India, and they did a cultural exchange with this brilliant musician who was teaching Jordan how to play GeoShred.
In a Carnatic style. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, just really incredible. No, that's something to really watch, like a new instrument like this, Geo Shred.
What's the difference for you then? I mean, like you obviously have a technique, but like if you're playing in this other style.
Yeah, well, one of the some of it was just not necessarily so physical, but you know, a musical kind of thing, and then applying it to Geo Shred. What was interesting to me when I first, you know, like when we first offered this instrument, is that we found out that a lot of the people doing Carnatic music, they want to use like the intelligent pitch rounding. It's not that they don't want to like play completely free form. They love the fact that they can do a slide and it'll nudge to the nearest real pitch. But what I discovered by sitting down with some of the guys there is that, you know, that they don't think of vibrato the same way. There is no vibrato in their language. If the pitch is going to move, it's all going to be extremely deliberate. It's not vibrato. And that was like the biggest kind of like awakening to that style that I had from my little time doing that sharing. You know, you don't know that when you listen to it, because from our perspective, from the Western perspective, you think, oh, it's vibrato, but it's not. You know, everything is very, very deliberate. So, you know, and seeing how you could express that on GeoShred to where they feel like it's this really effective instrument for doing that was like really amazing.
To this discussion, do you know these people who are mastering GeoShred for canonic music, are they coming from already playing the violin or the mandolin or some other thing, or are these people who are sort of blank slating it just from a new instrument?
We have all different people. Like there's a guy, like one of our main kind of endorsers at this point, Mahesh Raghavan, who is he plays, you know, different instruments. He can play a little bit of this. He plays a little bit of that. But he's never been so serious. He's a real GeoShred player. Now that is his main axe, and he's really, really good at it. So we've seen, you know, guys who are coming from like playing a keyboard and now expressing, you know, on GeoShred, and people who, you know, just take it on as a new instrument. And I think that more and more we're going to see that. You know, I think right now, especially in that world, it's a real solution for a lot of people because they can express that style in a way that you can't do anywhere else. It's really interesting to see.
So you can get a different layout for each raga, I suppose. Is that happening?
You can call up the different raga and you can have the notes on the screen. And right now, actually, the new mode that we have is you can actually, before everything was always chromatic, but you could highlight the notes of a raga. Now you can say, I want this raga, but that's all that's on the screen. Exactly. And we figured out how to make it so that even though you might have like a, you know, a third or an interval of a third or a fourth between the different notes and then maybe a half step, the sliding is like incredibly smooth. It's like, I don't even quite know how that was done, but it's amazing, right?
It just fell out naturally. I don't even know why it worked either.
It's amazing. No, it's really amazing. Like, you know, it's like if you have, like, is it
different intervals?
Quick example. Let me see if I can find this. I love this this example. So the Shred House Blues. All right. So on a string, I basically got. But like between B flat and D flat, oh sorry, wrong mode. In between D flat, D flat. So it's like the same amount of space, but the slides are still so smooth. It's a bit of a magic trick. The other thing that we do that I'm very excited about and love to show people is that in this mode, which we call the guitar mode, when you slide across a string, it's really just locking into the pitch exactly. But when your finger stops and you do a little vibrato, you still can do the vibrato. So it's locking into pitch, but when you stop, you can do vibrato. So it's kind of like what's going on.
What happens when you go one mode back and slide more than one? Just kind of works.
It works, yeah. And this guitar mode, just opens itself up to all these people who have maybe never played GeoShred before, but wanna shred, and they can do it. They can make music. So it achieved my personal goal of having an instrument that brings people into the music space and allows them to make music, and at the same time offers something for professional musicians where it kind of shakes up their world and they go, wow, what's going on? That's really, really cool. If I can do that with with an instrument or an app, then I know that we've scored. So yeah, is this
coming up to us today? I'm going, man, I took guitar lessons for 20 years. Now I feel ripped off.
That's funny.
I like the film of the young boy who's playing against the backing track and he's just playing the blues like nobody's business. And,
right. Yeah. Have you all heard the blues thing on GeoShred? Has anybody not? I should say, because I'll do a little bit of it. It's really pretty fun. Oh yeah, here's a little bit of a blues with this idea in mind of just having the notes of the scale on the surface. I think maybe I'll put it on my. I'll play it this way. If I sit, maybe it'll be better. All right, let's do some blues. No wrong notes. Right. Cool.
And you can even spill a beer on it, it'll survive.
There you go. No, that's the other product. I don't know if Apple is saying that. Yeah. We have to work on that. We have to work on that feature. Yeah. Cool. Yes.
Just going off of there are no wrong notes. Is there a way that you can I'm sure there is, but a way to set it so you can set the difficulty of it higher, so maybe there could be room for accidental errors that, because
totally.
There's musical happy accidents in music.
Yeah, right.
And not having that, it kind of takes away.
Yes, actually you can go completely from sliding without any pitch correction at all to completely locked in. So it depends on the patch, and every patch is totally programmable. Somebody might say, you know what, that pitch, like rounding stuff, auto-tune, that's cheating, and I don't want to play an instrument like that. And if they don't want to do that, they don't have to. And I wish them the best of luck.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's totally possible. You think about, you know, a great violinist. I mean, there's no technology on there. So it's, you know, it's up to the player how they want to do it.
It'd be interesting to see that, like years of somebody practicing with that in mind and seeing.
Yeah, right. Honestly, I haven't practiced too much without any rounding on, but you can also change the speed of the rounding, and you can determine whether the initial rounding of a note is separate from the rounding that happens when you slide and stop your finger. They're two different things. So you could, for instance, you could turn off the initial rounding, so therefore left or right of center is going to make a big difference, but it will pull into pitch if you still got that rounding on. So, or just take them.
When you end the note, yeah, it'll go into
When you end, yeah.
Yeah, that's what the distinction is. You could do no pitch rounding, then you'd get, like, it's a lot more slippery.
Yeah.
Right.
You just have to land just pretty much
Or-
damn near in the middle.
Or no initial rounding, or initial rounding but or initial rounding and no rounding when you stop after a slide.
Yeah.
Up to the
It is
player.
possible.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We like
It's in the
to
performance settings.
we like to give those options.
Yeah, just go.
So yeah, so the performance settings, and then you can change your slide speed. So like if I don't know if you can you, oh, you guys can see the green line. So the green line, the vertical green line, is tracking the pitch. So if I go from like B flat to F and I stop, you can see that even if I stop to the left of the F, you can see that the green line still goes to the middle. See? My finger is to the left of it, so really it could be flat. So if I move the slider this way, that's really fast, but if I move it really slow, then it's still going to round, but... see? But it finally got there. I can just take it off. Take it all off, and then I'm...
Can you hit guitar and then slide again? I want to see something. Then slide. Just hit slide again.
What?
Yeah, I don't know why that snap button's irrelevant. Oh, snap's irrelevant if rounding's off. That's why it's grayed
Right.
out.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
That's right. It's just completely freeform like that. Oh no, it's not. Look.
There, now there's no rounding going on. So now my initial is, if I hit left to B flat, it's flat. And right? So the snap will get that's my initial press. And then the slide speed. Now I'm way flat, but if I turn on the slide speed a little bit, then it'll tune it when I get there. Not rounding.
It's because pitch round is off.
Oh, round. Thank you. Make it slow. There.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, all the possibilities are there.
And then also the one last thing is when you pretty much let that note slide into it when you pulled your finger off. But if you pulled your finger off beforehand, it would also just snap back into pitch.
Oh.
You only notice.
How do you know so much about it? Something you heard some stories, like you talk to some people who know some people. Just
Little bunny running around last night.
Right. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, you guys have been awesome. Thanks so much. I recommend everybody goes out and gets some nice dinner.
Thank you so much.
All right.